All right, so welcome to our grammar lesson this week, this grammar live session, or maybe you're watching the recording of it. Awesome. We're going to be talking about apostrophes, but the first thing that I want to do is go over a word that is commonly misused. So our words today, let me get my text box here. Our words of the day are these three wonderfully often misused words: to, and to. There's no oral difference, and the word I just said, oral, is different than oral. So aural is sound. It is A-U-R-A-L. And oral, O-R-A-L, is speech or to do with the mouth, right? So those have a slightly different sound, but to, and to are pronounced exactly the same in standard English. So if you're listening, you have to go for context clues to be able to tell them apart. But let's go over some definitions really quickly. So when you have to, this is referring to it's either used as an adverb or a preposition, but we haven't covered those yet, so I'm going to leave those terms out of it. But usually it's to express moving toward something, or expressing motion. So for example, they went to the house. Right? That to is that direction. They went toward the house. That is one way that I like to think of it, is that with that to, I am moving like the word toward. It's just a nice shorter version for it. Yes, that's one way. So expressing that movement. And this is different than when you have TOO, to. This is an adverb, so it describes a little bit, and it is either in addition, an excessive degree, or just more, to express that you have a lot more of it. For example, don't get too near the fire. All right, thinking of fires because of California, Oregon, and Washington. If you have family out there, I hope they're safe. I have friends that have been evacuating because of forest fires and wildfires. It's a wild time. But don't get too near the fire, right? That's saying you're getting closer, maybe a little closer than you want to be, right? That too close. Don't get too near the fire, because if you get too near the fire, you might get burned, right? So another example would be like, I like him too much, right? The affection I feel is so strong, I'm not entirely sure what to do with it, so I'm going to say I like him too much. It's how I feel about most cats and dogs. Like, oh, they're so cute, right? They're too cute. And so because this is usually expressing, that TOO, to, is expressing some more, something extra or excessive, there's a lot of it, you have an extra O here, that TOO. That extra O, you're using too many O's. It's not too many. You're also using two O's in it, which leads to this. See, leads to this. That was the TO, moving towards. It leads or goes moving towards that other example of to. Kind of losing track of which two I'm talking about while I'm saying it. But 2TWO is the numerical value, or the number 2, right? I have 2 friends. So we could even write a sentence that has all three of these in there. I have two friends who live too far away for me to visit them. All right, so I have two friends. That context, we just learned about countable nouns, and friend is a noun. It has an S at the end, so it's plural. And so I have two friends becomes two lets us know how many friends I have. I have two. I have two friends who live too far away. That TOO, live too far away. It is so far away. It is maybe it's excessively far. It's so far apart. Live too far away from me to visit them. TO. So this is connected to this idea of visiting. So for me to go to where my friends are, right? That's that movement being described. But they're too far away. The distance is far greater than what I can cover maybe easily, right? It's a difficult journey because it's so much distance. But I have two friends there, that number two. So when you're going through these, I like to think of that two having the two O's, and we're going to get ahead of ourselves with an apostrophe here, but that is a very crude looking S. Yes, because two has two O's, right? So it has extra, it has an excessive amount of O's. So that is one way that I like to tell them apart. I do just kind of have to, remember that TWO is the numerical value, that number two. And so usually people have an easier time because that W is very distinctive. And usually the context clues make it a lot easier to tell that it's a number we're talking about. I have two friends, right? If we said, I have two friends, but we used TOO, I'm having movement towards friends doesn't make as much sense here, especially in the context of the rest of the sentence, who live too far away for me to visit them. And if it were 200, right, I have two friends. I have excessive friends. We would need to add a word here like many. I have too many friends. So it becomes a little bit different here. But it helps describe the amount as just being excessive or more than what you might want to have. It can also be used as a little as a sign of agreeing, like I like that too, right? I like that as well. It can replace as well in most cases too. All right, so we have this 2, 2, and 2. So hopefully as you move forward, you'll be able to tell a little bit of the difference here. Let's go ahead in the chat or in your free writes, would you send a practice sentence using two of the twos? All right, so you're going to type in the chat or send via email or text one sentence using two of the following, right? I'm trying to make the sentence really clear. 2, 2, or 2. All right. So go ahead and start working on that sentence that uses two types of the following: to, 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 too, or to, two. Sorry, two. All right, let's have about 3 minutes here, and I'll watch the chat to see how you all are getting on with that. Ashley, yes, good. I went to the mall with my 2 friends. Jennifer, I'm moving to Chicago with 2 of my closest friends. 2 of my friends like to jump rope too. Hey, getting all 3 in there. My 2 siblings wanted me to drive them to an arcade, but it is too far. Gustavo, good job throwing all 3 in there. Yes, so excellent. You can keep sending these in, or if you're watching the recording of this, please do send me this in addition to some of the later things I'll ask you to send in for that participation credit. Excellent work here. So let's get into our main subject of today. All right, so looks like I need to get ready to all right, I see my mom sent me to the grocery store. Yes, you've gotten that one use of to in there. Is there a way you could add the word too at the end? My mom sent me to the grocery store too, right? In addition to maybe someone else, maybe your sibling that also went to the grocery store. All right, so let me share here. I said 2 of my friends and we went together to the house. Great. Awesome. All right, so apostrophes. What are they? What do they do? Why can't I ignore them? Right? They are a very important part of English writing and language. Mostly, you don't hear apostrophes when you're speaking. You only really see them when they're written down or in some kind of text. There are apostrophes in other languages, Spanish, French, and are 2 that I know off the top of my head, but I think 7 or 8 languages around the world use apostrophes as contractions or possibly in other forms. So there, you might I'm not sure if they function the same in English as they do in some other languages. So these rules really only apply to English as it's written or spoken. So there are 3 uses for an apostrophe. Apostrophes are used to show contractions or omission of letters when you leave letters out of words. Apostrophes are used to show possession or ownership of who something belongs to, right? So my phone, to say that it belongs to me, you'd say like Darcy's phone. We'll get into building that out. And apostrophes are used to indicate plurals only in lowercase letters. There's only one time you use an apostrophe to make something plural. All right, we'll get into more of those. I'm still getting your sentences, so excellent, great work, Oscar, Kimberly, awesome. Okay, so let's go into our first use here. Apostrophes are used to show contractions or the omission of letters. Now, we all use contractions very often when we're speaking. I used at least one just now. Contractions are shortened versions of written and spoken forms of a word or a couple words. Usually when contractions are being used, it's in a more casual or informal setting. There are a couple that are standard that are acceptable in academic writing. Most aren't, but we're still going to go over them because there's some fun things about them. I find fun. If you're not using a contraction, but you're wanting to maybe do a bit of creative writing and capture the way someone is speaking, or maybe even to make your poem or a song have the same amount of syllables on a line, have the same rhythm to it, you might choose to omit certain letters, and an apostrophe is a way to show that you've taken a letter out. But let's start with contractions. So when I say informal contractions, I mean this is stuff you're going to use when you talk or when you're writing creatively, or maybe if you're writing down a quote from someone. But when we're talking about more formal, professional, or academic writing, they're not standard. All right, so we kind of have informal or casual, and we have standard as our categories for contractions. So as you can see, I'm not going to talk through necessarily all of these, but we have the full form of the word or phrase. Cannot becomes can't, and we have to have that apostrophe there between the N and the T. All right, this actually is signaling that it's taking out 2 letters, but no matter, even if it's taking out 1 or 2, sometimes 3, it still will just be 1 apostrophe. So you'll see here, even though we have 2 words here, does not, right? In normal speech, we usually say doesn't. And so we push the words together, we remove the space, and we put that apostrophe. We are becomes we're, they are becomes their, right? So we just have that apostrophe signaling there was another letter here, and the context is going to give us that. A strange one, because it's not how we knew. We would never, rarely say, am I not this? Like, am I not your teacher? The contraction of it is a lot of times associated with like more Southern accents, right? Ain't. Or just non-standard English. This, for a long time, ain't was not in the dictionary, and people argued over whether it is a word or not. It is. it's definitely a word. We have let us, let's, and I am, I'm. So we have all these contractions here. I am going to post this PowerPoint onto Brightspace so you can reference this if you would like. We have more informal contractions, and this chart may be a little more because I have the different varieties that it can take. So when we say like what does, if we're being informal, we'll say what's she do all day, right? So what's she do all day? What does she do all day? Taking out all 3 letters here and pushing that together to get what's. But you'll notice that that contraction is the same as 2 other possible options, is and has. So we can say what does something, what or he or she is. When you're contracting that, it'll be what's, he's, she's, right? He's going to the store, she's sitting over there. What's the plan for class today? All of that is what is the plan for class today? What is he doing? She is sitting over there. We're contracting it together. So this is one reason they're informal, is because it may not be clear if you see the written form on whether it is does, is, or has. That can become a little confusing. So that's why in academic writing, we usually write it out. We'll say what has happened. He has been here. She has a baby, right? So we're going to write out those contractions to add clarity to our writing, especially in an academic context. I or we can combine with have to be I've or we've. He, she, they, we can join together with had and become he'd, she'd, they'd, we'd. Yes, sounds like, you know, the dandelions growing in your yard, weed. He, she, they, did also sounds the same. He'd, she'd, they'd, we'd. This is the same with would. He'd, she'd, they'd, we'd. He would, she would, they would, we would. So they all end up looking the same when they're contracted. And the rest of the sentence will have to give us clues as to what the author means. Does the author mean had, did, or would? And this is often like we can guess this when we're in a conversation because they're not super different meanings, but it is sometimes very important to have those distinctions. And we also have will and shall. Shall is less common. We shall overcome is what comes to mind when I really hear that. But if we said we'll overcome, you do say more like a wagon wheel, right? So we'll overcome versus will, like willpower, will overcome, we'll overcome. It sits kind of between them pronunciation wise. But we will, we'll, and we shall become still will as well. All right, so this isn't something that I expect you to memorize, but this is a good thing to be able to reference when you need, when you see a contraction. It's good to think, oh, what is this if I were to write it out? If I were to write out he will, do I really know if it's will or shall? But for academic writing, it's good to always write out contractions because it makes your writing clearer and leaves less room for confusion. There are many informal contractions that are different words if you leave out the apostrophe. So not only if you have a contraction in your writing with an apostrophe, your reader might be a little confused as to what is being contracted, what words are squished together. But if you leave out the apostrophe, it will be a different word and spell checker may not catch it and your reader is going to be confused. So for example here, he, as in he will or he shall, becomes hell if we leave out the apostrophe, as in sheep go to heaven and goats go to hell, right? So if we are wanting to reference he will and we write hell, that's a very different meaning. She'll, like she'll be going there. It's a little hard for me to say. I don't use that one too much, but it becomes shell, as in I went to the lake and found an empty shell. Something used to live in here. It's on the beach. It's gorgeous, but a shell is very different than she will. She'd becomes shed, as in our backyard has a creepy empty shed, right? A little building that usually is used to hold tools. We're, as in we are, becomes were, as in past tense action. We were going to go until COVID-19 hit. We had a plan. We wanted to do it. It was going to happen, but now COVID hit. We were going to go. Now we can't. Were in that pronunciation is very different than we're. So when you're talking, you can hear that difference of we're, we are, versus were, we were going. And then we'd, like we would, or we did, or we could. We'd becomes wed, which is a little less common, but will they wed is kind of like saying, will they get married? So again, it can add to confusion. The most uncommon example, but one that does come up is can't. So can't with the apostrophe, quick check-in in the chat. What is can't contraction? What's the long form of can't with an apostrophe? Cannot, yes. Now I will say you're all writing it with a space, and even though that sometimes is appropriate, sometimes Gustavo, you're right. Sometimes it is together. If you're gonna say I cannot go, usually it's pushed together. It becomes it's compound. It's not a noun, but it usually is pushed together like that. Yes, small thing. But if you're using can't as the contraction, and you've forgotten the apostrophe, it becomes can't, which is both a noun, so a thing. This would be this I want to know. So I'm not going to tell you what type of noun I'm going to ask, but can't is a noun. It is an insincere when expressing enthusiasm or piety. So this is more of a idea or a concept of someone being like, oh, yeah, I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited. Uh, like fake enthusiasm, right? Being insincere about it. What type of noun do you think that is? A noun that expresses a feeling, an idea, or a concept. Abstract. Thank you, Ashley. Yes, we have the abstract noun, right, for a concept that we can't necessarily touch or interact with our senses. So here it's the idea of having insincere enthusiasm, right? Someone expressing to you that they're excited for you, and you can tell that they are not actually excited, right? That's their can't. It can also be a verb, like we'd say, oh, she's canting. She's talking hypocritically. So being a hypocrite is saying one thing and doing another. So if you're talking hypocritically, you might say, oh, I'm vegan, so I don't eat animal products, but sometimes I eat fish. Well, fish is an animal product. So if you're talking about not eating an animal product and then you talk about eating an animal product, that's being a bit hypocritical, and that would be canting. It can also be a little whining or begging, like your kids probably can't to you when they want candy at the grocery store, right? They're going to be begging for it and maybe whining a little bit. This is not commonly used in English because it sounds exactly the same as the contraction. So most people have stopped using can't as a noun or a verb and simply use it as cannot. However, you got to have that apostrophe in there when you're writing it. So do remember that. All right, but academic writing does not use informal contractions. So why do you think that is? I have kind of told you, but I'd love to hear from you on your mic or in the chat or text me again. Why do you think that academic writing does not use informal contractions? And if you are watching this, you must send me an answer to this question, email, or text. If you're here in the chat, you can send it via chat. We'll have about 3 to 4 more minutes here for you to write out and share your answer. Checking answers here on my phone that I'm getting. Right, Bethany says they don't use informal maybe because it may make the writing less professional and also make the writing a little confusing to read. Yeah, that's, mhm. Oscar, thank you. Ashley got yours. Okay, great. Mhm. Yes. So thank you, Jasmine. And Ashley, yes, got yours. If you're still sending it in, that's all right. You can keep doing so. This will count towards your participation credit for this session. You know, when we're talking about making something sound more professional or academic, this can be a code that we switch into, right? We were talking about code switching earlier this week. And so when you're on your own, you know, or with your friends, or even talking with your professional peers, it's very common. I just used it is, right? It's very common to use contractions. And that's fine. But usually with writing, again, yeah, Leslie, we're adding that clarity, right? That there's not going to be those several meanings. It's going to be more clear and, yeah, adds credibility that comes from Julieta. So thank you. And yeah, it's a different type of style, Jennifer. Great. Thank you for sharing those responses here. So let's get back. So we have then a few standard contractions that are usually that only one really appears in academic writing, but others are seen as very acceptable and not informal. Like they're not as casual. And yes, this includes one that might throw you for a loop. So the full form would usually, if we're contracting several words that contain of or of the, these are often compound nouns, right? Where we're using multiple words and connecting them either with a space, a hyphen, or putting them together. So we have here the example of o'clock. right? So if we were going to say like 6 o'clock, I've typed it in the chat, but I actually am gonna put it up here as well, right? So we could say like 6 o'clock. It's 6 of the clock, meaning that it is hitting the number 6. If you're thinking of like a standard clock with a face and the 2 hands, you know, that go around. So 6 of the clock becomes 6 o'clock. And we've just standardized this use for so long that this is acceptable. And that's the way we write o'clock. We'd never write 6 of the clock. This goes with a few other things. Cat o' nine tails is both a plant and a form of a whip. Jack-o'-lantern, we're coming into the spooky season, right? You might celebrate Halloween and carve a pumpkin or a jack-o'-lantern. This also comes from like will-o'-wisp and jack-of-wisps, this idea of these little flames that pop up in the forest secretly that might be spirits. Comes from more of a druid tradition, I believe. Might be wrong about that, but little bits of light and were mysterious. And so Jack-o'-wisps was a figure that could jump between these little lights that were going off in the woods. And for Halloween, it was celebrated by having him in a jack-o'-lantern, creating a lantern out of a pumpkin with a little candle in there. Yes. So these are standard, meaning they're not going to change, you're not going to write them out, and they are completely acceptable in academic writing. Really, most likely, the only one you're going to use is o'clock. There are a couple other, this isn't a complete list of the type of standard contractions, but this is honestly some of the most commonly used ones. I don't think you're going to come across too many more when you need to write. Then we have twas as that would be written out as it was. And this is really only used when we're trying to capture an older style of English, that way of speaking, an older English. I say standard, it is standard, but it's also archaic, meaning it's old and not used. So the most common one is with 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. That classic English Christmas tale of the night before Christmas. Pretty much the only time you really hear 'twas. Then you have, this is standard, you all becomes y'all. This was news to me when I was doing some research. It is not standard to use you or contractions in academic writing. So I'd say this will not appear in your essays, but if it is appearing in some other type of writing, it's actually standard and is a great gender neutral greeting. Or reference to a group of people. It's saying, hey girls, hey boys, hey guys. We can say, hey y'all. And I'm not from any state that regularly uses it, but I've started because I think it's fun. So these are the standard contractions. You'll see there's not as many at all. All right, so I'm not going to have you practice these because there's not really a point unless you're writing o'clock, and I think you all can manage to write that. Okay. So let's move on here. Okay. So the other time you use an apostrophe to omit a letter, so we just talked about how you use an apostrophe to omit letters for contractions, but you also do it to capture dialect or a way of speaking. So if you're writing in English and you're wanting to show no accent, so academic writing, we usually try to go with no accent markers. Let's say we say, can we get going? Right? A little casual question, maybe pushing us to all move along. With an accent, often people will drop the G at the end of their words. So can we get going? Can we get going? can we get going? Right? And so we're going to use the apostrophe after the N to show that we took the G off and that we want the word to be said as if it has no G at the end. But that apostrophe acts as a placeholder so we can know that the author intended to forget the G, that they didn't just forget to put it on there. I was not going to do that. I wasn't. We have a standard contraction here, or sorry, an informal contraction here. I wasn't gonna do that. I wasn't gonna do that, right? When I say it out loud, it sounds a little different. And so here, this apostrophe is kind of going with the form of gonna, which is not technically a correct word. Going becomes gonna, which then gonna becomes gun. I wasn't gonna do that. All right, so gonna is the more casual way of saying, of how we'd write what we say is how it sounds phonetically. Going, gonna. It's very different, even though technically gonna is not a word yet. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you may recognize this. I'll start with the accent one. So this is Hagrid from the Harry Potter series. And this is a quote from the book. So J.K. Rowling used apostrophes to omit letters so we could understand what how Hagrid talked. Well, you might have bent a few rules, Harry, but you're all right, really, aren't you? Right, so no hard T's at the end of right and aren't, or but, which how we'd, if I wrote it all out with no apostrophes here, well, you might have bent a few rules, Harry, but you are all right, really, aren't you? It's much more formal and doesn't quite capture the specifics English dialect or accent that Hagrid has. He has a very, very particular accent, and I'm not familiar enough with the different types of English accents to really tell you which one it is, but it is not the posh or fancy British accent. It is seen as more of a lower class accent. Anyway. So you can see here too that J.K. Rowling did some phonetic spellings with, instead of you saying well yeah, Y-E-H. And that's something you can do, you have the liberty to do when you're writing creatively, when you're writing something, you know, fiction, poetry, songs, even movies. You can play with spelling to show how it sounds, but you usually only do it within quotation marks. And this type of writing out dialect is not usually done in academic writing. So there's that. Anyway. Okay, so let's go on. So we just covered one of the rules, right? You use apostrophes to take out letters to show that you've omitted some, to show mostly contractions, and then a couple things other as well. Possessive apostrophes are the main one that people can get a little confused by, and that's all right. Hopefully we'll clear up some confusion here. So apostrophes are used to show possession or belonging. If you ever, you know, are finding yourself asking, oh, whose is this? Oh, it's Darcy's, right? If you are actually going to write that out, whose is this? It's Darcy's. You'll see I am using a contraction here with its, and the test, can you write it out as it is, and does it make sense? It is Darcy's. And this apostrophe S shows that whatever it is referring to, in this case maybe my phone, right, holding up my phone, it the phone is Darcy's. It belongs to her. She owns it. And ownership and belonging may not mean like the as literal, but like if I said, oh, like Darcy's job, I don't really own my job, but I have my job, right? It is mine. So it's not necessarily like I bought it, I paid for it, but it's who does it belong to? Yes. So, yes, apostrophes help form that possession or belonging with nouns. So specifically nouns being person, place, thing, idea, feeling, or concept, right? We went over nouns last week. You can always go over that presentation. It's up on Brightspace and YouTube as well. So you can refer back to the nouns as you need. Because all of our grammar is going to be building on each other. So if you're like, oh, nouns, I don't remember, I go back and study your notes and the other information about nouns so you can have a better grasp on the future things that we talk about. And apostrophes. So to see if you need to make a noun possessive, one way to do that is to turn the phrase around and make it an of the phrase. Usually trying to say something with a lot more words, and it comes out sounding a little fancier or a little more stiff and formal. For example, the hat of the boy, right? The hat of the boy, we can infer and understand that this hat referenced belongs to the boy, whoever this boy is. But the other way we can say that is the boy's hat. So if we come across the phrase the boy's hat, one thing that I will do to test too of do we need this apostrophe here, right? So if you're going over your own work and you're looking at every apostrophe, which is a good thing to do to see, do I need this apostrophe? One thing that I do with that is that I will write out the boy is hat. And I write it out that way because if this is a contraction, it'll probably be for the boy is, right? We'd say like the boy's late. If we wrote that out as boy is late, it makes sense. And so I know the boy is late because late is a state of being that people can be, right? You're not on time, you're late. So the boy is late will make sense. The boy is hat. Does that make sense? A yes or no in the chat? The boy is hat. What do I mean by a boy is hat? Like a hat is a physical thing that you'd put on your head, right? Can a boy be a hat?
No.
Correct. Yeah. So I could be carrying a young boy, you know, on my shoulders. Maybe, you know, I'd even like jokingly put a small child on top of my head, right? But a boy is not a hat. A boy hopefully will never be turned into a hat, right? So by saying the boy is hat doesn't work because a boy can't be a hat. Whereas the boy is late means that the boy wasn't on time. That's something the boy can be, right? What are some other things that the boy can be? The boy could be cute, right? The boy could be short. These are more descriptive words. They're, you know, cute is kind of in the eye of the beholder. I think a lot of cats and, you know, puppies are cute, and other people may say, nah, that's not a cute puppy. I don't know who you are, but that'd be strange. But if the boy is hat, hat is another noun. It is an object. And so most of the time people cannot be objects, right? So the boy is like shorts would be a pair of shorts, right? The boy is shorts doesn't make logical sense because a boy can't be a pair of shorts. So when you're seeing an apostrophe, if you write out the boy is, you can see, does it make sense? Is the boy actually a hat, or is or is or, like he's not a hat? So it must be that the hat belongs to the boy. All right, so it's something, it's a hat that's in his possession. So this apostrophe, since it cannot be a contraction, it would not make sense if it said the boy is hat. We know it's the boy's hat, it belongs to him. So another example would be the 3 days journey. So this is a more advanced idea of ownership, is the journey of 3 days, how long this journey took. It's that the days are owning and using that journey. So the journey here is more of an abstract noun. It might not be something we can touch, because a journey is an idea of a trip, right? That we're going from point A to point B. And it's owned by the 3 days that it'll take. It's going to take 3 whole days to do this journey, so that journey belongs to the 3 days that it'll take to do. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about what to do if if the noun is singular or plural. But I do want to say that there is kind of an exception to the rule here. If a noun after of, like the journey of 3 days, is a building, object, or piece of furniture, no object is needed. So this usually is like the door of the car door. We don't need to say car's door, although that does still kind of make sense. Part of it is because that these nouns become compound nouns. So actually, I want to type that here. These become compound nouns, right? So compound nouns, these ones will have spaces between them. But a car door is, when I say car door, probably a very specific image comes into your mind of the door of the car. The door does belong to the car, but because we can say that it's a certain feature, it can also be the compound noun, like a table leg, like a cup handle, right? It's a feature attached to it, so it clearly belongs together, but it refers to this specific part of the cup, so it becomes a more specific noun, and also is compound with the word cup, of what this big thing is, and then handle, the name for this feature. Okay. Okay. So let's look at how to make singular nouns possessive. So a singular noun, right, is a person, place, or thing that there is one of. So often these will be countable nouns, right? So a singular noun is one of a noun, a dog, a cat, the hat, a friend, right? We can use the and a both to refer to one, or we could say one dog, right? One cat, one hat, all of that. So we're going to add apostrophe S to the singular form of the word, even if that word ends in S. So let's start with the owner's car, right? So there's one owner, and we know this because of the word the, but we also, that won't always apply. The can refer to like the classes, textbooks, right? If our class had a bunch of textbooks that we shared, we could say the class, because you're right, that's the collective noun, that one group, that one class. So that doesn't always mean one, just sometimes that's a hint. But because the apostrophe is before the S, that's what tells us that there's one person that owns this car. One, now here we have it in the sentence, right? This makes it easy. One dog's bone. This bone belongs to that one dog. If we left the apostrophe out, we'd be making the word dog plural, as in multiple dogs. And we couldn't say one dogs when we meant more than one dog. So that apostrophe becomes a big important part. If we also wrote this out, one dog is bone, does not make sense again, because a dog cannot be another object, right? A dog is a dog. A dog can't be a bone, hopefully. And if you took a bone from a dog, it is still like you own your body parts, and a dog does too. So, you know, it's your bone inside your arm, right? All right. Then we have Jaime's hat, right? Jaime is the person, the one person that who owns that hat. This is one of the clear ways to know if something's singular possessive is you have a proper noun, right? I know it's a proper noun because it's a person's name and it's capitalized with that first letter. So we know that this is one person named Jaime, and we have the apostrophe S to show us that this hat belongs to Jaime. We also have if a word ends in S. So James is a name that ends with S. We always say James when a person's name is James, right? And so when we actually read this out, you could say James hat, but usually we'd say James's hat. James's. So we add a little S with the E, kind of the ES sound, S, James's hat. James is the one person. He's still one individual who owns that hat, but we see that it'll look a little stranger to some people. This is a little weird looking because it'll be James's hat. So singular nouns, always you're putting an apostrophe S at the end. In the chat, will each of you make a singular noun possessive? So a person, place, or thing, how would you make them possess? So you're creating your own example of something like Jaime's hat, James's hat, the dog's bone. I'd like to see how you would create your own singular possessive noun. It could be something that you have, right? Like Darcy's phone. Is my question clear, or do I need to rephrase it, say it differently?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, so what I'd like you to do in the chat is can you make a noun possessive? So like I did here with Jaime's hat or the owner's car, maybe I should say more of like, write your own example of a singular possessive noun, and maybe use your own name. So like I said, Darcy's phone, right? Can you write an example with your own name? Yes, okay, there, yes. So Kimberly's notebook, Jasmine's skateboard, yes, that's what I'm looking for. I was having trouble figuring out how to phrase that. Thanks for answering my question there. Yes. Mm-hmm. So what if you go for a different type of noun? So you've used your own name, a proper, your own proper noun. What about a different concrete noun? So a different noun that you can touch, um, smell, taste. Okay. Valeria's sister. Okay, great. All right. Good. All right. We'll work on some other examples later on. I just want to get a feel for how, yes, an apple's taste. That's a really good one. Taste is a specific sense, but we're referring to it. It's kind of, it's both concrete and abstract to me because I can't touch, see, smell, or hear taste. Some people whose senses interconnect in their brain, called synesthesia, can. But an apple's taste, right? That's a distinctive idea or concept that I know, but it belongs to that apple. So very good example, Hemilix. Okay, so let's go here. Now, when you have a noun that is more than one, when you have it plural, so there are multiple nouns, multiple ones, right? I have 7 dogs, or I have, a more realistic thing is I have 3 mugs that I use regularly. Usually this one that says big hug mug, it's backwards on your screen. Usually use that one. But I have 3 mugs, right? So when you're looking into the regular plural nouns, to make a regular noun plural, a regular, and this is any type of noun, not often proper nouns, but common nouns of pretty much any type, if they're in their regular form, you can put an S at the end and make it plural, like dog becomes dogs. If you need to say that the bone belongs to multiple dogs, more than one, the apostrophe will go after the S. So here in this example, that's the dog's bone. So here, right, I have the contraction. I don't have the context. This could be that is or that was. That's the dog's bone. Because the apostrophe is right there, the apostrophe is right there instead of in front of the S. That is the signal that the bone belongs to multiple dogs, because the word dogs is actually plural with that S. So that is, or that was, the dog's, all of the dog's bone. So yes, so Mr. Hilton's home, that's a very good example of that singular one. And so if we were to take that idea, and let's say that, and we refer to not just Mr. Hilton, right? If we were looking at the whole family of Hiltons, and so we said the Hilton's home, where would the, because this is now, we're adding the S to make Hilton plural. There's more than one Hilton. We're talking about the Hilton family, right? Where would the apostrophe go? Would it go before the S or after the S?
Is before the S, the Hilton's home.
So that it would go before if we were just talking about one member of the Hilton's family. So when you said in the chat, Mr. Hilton, right? That's referring to just one
One
person here.
person. Yes, ma'am.
But if we're referring to more than
The
one,
apostrophe will go after the S.
correct? Yes. With people's names, it can be confusing because sometimes we'll say like the Hilton family's home. And the word family is a collective noun that refers to every single member of that family, right? But it's just one noun and it's considered singular in that form. But we know that there's multiple people in it and it's associated with the Hilton family. But if we're not using the word family, then this possessive apostrophe has to then be connected to the Hiltons. And we know there's more than one, so we have to move it over to the outside of the S here. Yes, great example, because it can be a little tricky there. But outside of names of family members, it's a little easier. Proper nouns make it so you have to really think about exactly what you're saying. But with most regular plural nouns, you're just going to put it at the end of the sentence, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah, right? Yeah, nope. I'm trying to think of a different example, but I'm wanting to also move on. We'll get to some other practice here in a little bit. We're going to talk about, though, the fact that most nouns, you do just put an S at the end and it becomes plural. Paintings, windows, streetlights. I'm naming things that I'm saying right now. Cups, pencils, phones, right? We're just adding an S at the end to say there's more than one. But there also in English, to make it fun and confusing, is there are irregular plural nouns. So these are nouns that refer to more than one, but they are not made by putting an S at the end. So two examples here would be child, right? To make the word like child means one kid. And so if you have more, you say children. So it is an irregular. You don't say childs with an S at the end, unless you were doing a singular noun here. You could say the child's bed, right? That bed belongs to that one child. But if you're going to have more, if you have more than one child, so you have children, right? The children becomes a collective noun for however many children are in a certain area. Some teachers refer to their, if they're teaching like elementary school, they'll say children gather around. And they just refer to all of the children in the vicinity. Or you could say my children, right? And you're referring specifically to the number of children you have. But if you're saying like the children's bed, because you'd have to make beds plural unless you meant they all shared one bed. All right, so there's a slight difference here. The children, because this is an irregular noun, that this is the plural form, we put the apostrophe before the S. All right, so if the word is already meaning more than one of something, and it is an irregular one that does not end with S to make it plural, you're gonna put apostrophe S after it. Whew. And then you'll want to be careful here, right? Because here, if we leave bed singular, it would imply that all of these children own and share this bed, one bed. Whereas if we put an S at the end of beds, suddenly we have that all of these children have multiple, like all of these children between them have multiple beds, hopefully enough beds. All right. Another irregular plural noun here, and I can't go over all the irregular nouns and regular nouns because that is quite a bit of the English language. So this is something that as you increase your vocabulary or as you're practicing or writing using plural nouns that are regular, ending with, you can just add an S, or irregular, you're going to just have to practice using the apostrophes in different scenarios here. But here with the irregular plural noun for goose, so goose, right, referring to one goose, one kind of large white bird that's terrifying. I don't like geese, but multiple of them become geese. So goose becomes geese. It is very irregular, but if the geeses owned something, all right, so like the geese's food, where would the apostrophe go? Before or after the S with this irregular plural noun? Before. Okay, yes, Oscar, that is correct, right? So because geese is an irregular noun, that it means there are multiple geese. If there was just one, you'd say goose. So the geese's food, because geese is a word for multiple goose, more than one goose. We know that this food belongs to all the geese, which is different than like the goose's food, which would be, oh, this food belongs to one goose. The apostrophe is in the same place, so what kind of helps us know the number is actually the word itself, which is different than when we're talking about a regular noun that, like dogs, that the apostrophe will go after the S to show that there are multiple dogs, and that apostrophe location becomes really important with those regular nouns when you're making them plural and possessive of something. This apostrophe does not make something plural. It's the S or the verb's conjugation that change from goose to geese, but showing that possession belongs to that apostrophe, that this apostrophe shows that this bone belongs to these dogs. This apostrophe shows that the food belongs to the geese. Usually, not all the time, but with a lot of sentences, more simple sentences, the noun that follows this noun, so whatever belongs to someone, like Darcy's phone, right? We're looking at Darcy's phone. The word phone comes right after my name. So we can say, oh, this is what is being owned or possessed. It's coming after this main noun that owns this one. So that word order can help too. But sometimes it'll be a little more spread out, the more complicated sentences you get. Okay, let's clear that. And we're going to go into some practice things. So what we just covered now is the possessive use of apostrophes. And this does take practice. So we're going to practice a bit right now. So either you can text me, you can write them by hand and text a picture to me, or you can text on your phone or type in the chat, or even send me an email. This is something, if you're watching the recording of, you need to do as well. I want you to rewrite the following sentences to show possession. Does the thing belong to a plural or singular noun? That will help you here. So let me show you one example. Right, so if I have this sentence, that is the tea that belongs to the teacher. This is also a lot of words. So showing possession can, with an apostrophe, takes up less space. It's more concise and is often more easily understood by your reader or whoever's listening to you speak, right? That tea belongs to the teacher. How I would want to rephrase it is, I'm thinking of what is the thing that is possessing and what is being possessed, what is being owned, and who is owning it. So that is the tea that belongs to the teacher. So who is the person who's possessing here? Who's doing the ownership in the sentence? That is the tea that belongs to the teacher.
Ma'am,
Yes, I heard someone speak, but quietly. Could you speak up?
it's me, Henrietta. Is there a way I can speak with you privately? I'm actually in the hospital. I'm not feeling too good. Honestly,
Oh.
I put on my video and you see where I am. This is where I am.
Oh, Henrietta. Okay. So what I'd say, Henrietta, is yes, we can arrange to talk later. This recording will be put on Brightspace, so you don't have to worry about anything now. You should take care of yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, yes. Please
I'll,
be
I'll,
well.
I'll send you a message so you know what is happening.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes. Take care, Henrietta. All right. Um, So yes, Jennifer, you say yes, the teacher's tea. That's exactly right. So when you're thinking, okay, what is the object being possessed or owned, right? That would be the tea itself. I have a mug of tea right here, right? So this tea, oh, that's the thing that's being owned, that belongs, right? This is a hint to this word belongs. The tea belongs. Who does it belong to? Oh, the tea belongs to the teacher. So as Jennifer wrote it in the chat, we can rewrite this as the teacher's tea, right? Here we have 3 words. We could say, we could increase it. That is the teacher's tea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. That's a much shorter sentence than that is the tea that belongs to the teacher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Oof. Yes. So in what I'd like you to do is in the chat or text or email me, I would like you to make the remaining 4 sentences here into sentences that use apostrophes to show possession. So you're going to rewrite these sentences here like I rewrote this one about that is the tea that belongs to the teacher. I rewrote it to be that is the teacher's tea. So I'd like you to rewrite those are the toys that belong to the children. That is the favorite toy of my 2 dogs. When will we get to the house of grandma? I have to obey the laws of the country. All right, so you're going to be rewriting those. Yes. All right, getting some in here. Great. Okay, Oscar, I got yours. Excellent, thank you. So let's give this about 4 or 5 minutes here. So we will on at all right, we have 1 more minute here. Again, if you're not quite done, you can send these to me later. We're going to go over, though, the, oh, I'm getting more here. Great. So what is wonderful here is that there are a couple different correct ways to rewrite these sentences with possessive apostrophes. And some of these are a little easier than others. So here we have, let's look at this first sentence. Those are the toys that belong to the children. And I think most of you had a very successful answer of those are the children's toys, right? What helps here is that toys is also plural, as is children, because when we get to this second one here, that is the favorite toy of my 2 dogs. We go from having one thing that is singular, and that we usually, I know we haven't talked too much about verbs, but when we say is, right? When I say like, she is going to the store, that is usually a singular verb. If there were multiple people, we'd say they are. So when we're changing this sentence, I saw several of you wrote, that is my dog's favorite toy. You wrote it like, that is my dog's favorite toy. And that is a correct apostrophe, because it makes that multiple dogs are like share a favorite toy. How cute. But because now it's the dogs are the ones connected to this verb instead of the toy, we're gonna have to change the beginning part of this to those are my dog's favorite toy. Wait, nope, that does not sound right at all. I read that out loud and that did not sound right. Never mind. I was confused. This is why I usually read my work out loud, because my I hear, when I hear things, I'm able to judge better if it's correct or not. So yay, fun times. But that is my dog's favorite toy. You are correct. All of you that did that, awesome work. We had when will we get to the house of grandma, right? And when will we get to grandma's house? Now remember that because this is a question and ends with a question mark, we want to keep that question mark when we rewrite the sentence. We want to make sure it still is a question here. And then the last one, I have to obey the laws of the country. And I wanted to look because there were a couple different examples here. Let me just see here. First I want to go back to, that is my dog's favorite toy. Julieta, you had a sentence that is phrased differently and is so close to being a correct way to rewrite this sentence. So you wrote those toys, so kind of changing it to a plural form of toys, but that's, so it is kind of changing the message there. But if we said that toy is my dog's. Now, this is removing some extra words, which is fine when you're rewriting a sentence. You're making it even tighter. I'm forgetting the term for this type of sentence. I think it's reflexive, but I don't want to be quoted on that. But especially when you're just talking casually, often you'll say, oh, that toy is my dog's, right? Oh, yeah, that sweater's my friend's. What the full sentence might say is, that sweater is my friend's sweater. That toy is my dog's toy. But with the apostrophe, we're going to say, oh, the dogs are still possessing something. It's just not right after. We have to go and look for it elsewhere in the sentence. But we still have here with the apostrophe after the S, but before the period, that apostrophe is really the key in signaling something belongs to the dogs. What was it? What is the thing in this sentence? And I usually will work backwards if it's not right after. I'll work backwards to find out that, oh yes, this is the only noun in this sentence besides dogs. It's a thing, that toy. So, okay, that is my dog's toy, but I can write it as, that toy is my dog's. And then this here, if it was just one dog, we'd put the apostrophe there. That toy is my dog's. That toy is my dog's. So it sounds the same, plural, or whether dogs is plural or singular. But that is very interesting sentence that I wanted to share here. And then with the last one, there was a good example that I got here. So we have, I have to obey the laws of the country. One version we got, thank you, Bethany, the country's laws I must obey. This is one way that we could rewrite it. That's a little more kind of like Yoda, how Yoda from Star Wars speaks. I must obey the country's laws, but reverses it, the country's laws I must obey, right? It is still very correct, just a little different, kind of fun. One that I received that I want to comment on, because I think this is a little trickier, right? Because we're talking about something that's bigger and is not always as clear as like, well, I went and purchased something, so it belongs to me, but I have to obey the laws of the country. What is the thing being owned in this sentence? The thing that's being possessed? Law? Yes, Oscar, correct. Yeah, so I'm looking for the different nouns, the different things, and since we haven't gone over the other parts of speech yet, you know, that can still be a little tricky if you're not sure what a verb, an adverb, or adjectives are already. So if you're a little like, that's okay, it'll get easier as we continue. But laws, we have the key phrase here of the, right? So the laws belong to the country. So, for example, one sentence that was sent to me was, I have to obey the laws of the country. But here, having the apostrophe in the word law makes it seem like the laws own something, that the laws own the country. At least how our country is set up, we are in charge to a certain degree of our own laws, right? I say we, meaning the collective country, and our system has created the laws and has ownership of them. Not that each of us can control the laws, because we can't. We can vote. But because what actually is owning the laws is the country here, we're going to change it. Yeah, the country's laws. All right. So yes, I do like must here. I like that word choice there. So, but like we could say here, instead of have to, we could say must. I must obey the country's laws, right? There's a bit more urgency there. Good work. Possessive apostrophes are ones that people can confuse more, but that's okay. What I do expect is that as you're writing, practice using apostrophes and then check them yourself, right? Try to ask, okay, you know, what is being possessed or held or owned, and who is or what is owning or possessing that thing. Usually they will both be nouns, right? So a person, place, or thing, or a feeling, idea, or concept, right? They can be concrete and abstract. In some ways, our laws are kind of both, right? We can see them written, but how they actually affect our lives and the world around us is so broad and big that we might not be able to like pinpoint exactly all the time. Yes, it's our laws that are doing X, Y, and Z. Yes. So yeah. All right. So just a quick note on possessive pronouns. So pronouns are a type of noun that we haven't really gone over, but the big ones when we're talking about, you know, owning something or that possessive would be his, hers, theirs, ours, yours, whose, or its. These are all personal possessive pronouns. It's not a fully complete list, but it gives you an idea. They already show ownership on their own and never use apostrophes. So if you were to say, that is his hat, not hers, right? His and hers already show possession because of kind of the meaning of the word. we're not saying that is he hat, right? His becomes that possessive form of he. Hers is the possessive form of her or she. Yours is over there, right? So yours is showing that you possess something. That whatever device, electronic device you're listening to this or watching this on, that's your device. It's yours. Theirs is on the shelf. It is a little tricky because it is both a contraction. It can be a contraction when it has that apostrophe. So whenever you see ITS, look to see if it has that apostrophe, and if it does, that is a contraction, meaning it is. That's one reason, again, that when I'm looking at an apostrophe with singular pronouns or singular nouns, that I practice by being one dog is bone. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's not right. A dog cannot be a bone. But it is will make more sense in a sentence if it actually is something. If it does not have an apostrophe, the it owns something. For example, it's hard to tell, but the key is in its hiding spot. So here I used both forms, it apostrophe s, so I can say it is hard to tell, but the key is in its hiding spot. If I were to see if I should put an apostrophe in this second it's, I could say, but the key is in it is hiding spot. And that doesn't sound as correct to me because the key is in it is. I already have an is here that is telling me what the key, the physical state of the key, right? The key is in the hiding spot that belongs to the key. Yes. So that can be a little tricky one, but I'm sure with practice, you'll be great. Whose can be tricky because it sounds just like whose, which means who is. So you'll see that wow, forgetting the first letter here, WHOSE versus WHO apostrophe S. With that apostrophe, right, I can practice saying, oh, who is? This is a contraction of something. So that is different than whose, which asks, who does this belong to? So one example would be, whose dog is this? Right? If I'm on the street, a little puppy comes running up to me, I'm going to scoop it up all, hold it, cute little puppy. But I might then say, oh, whose dog is this? Because I'm looking, who owns this dog? If I were to say, who's this dog? I'm asking about the dog's name, right? I'm asking about who the little puppy is as a puppy. So there's a difference of whose dog is this. There's also that kind of, word order. Who owns this dog? Whose dog is this? Looking for the owner. Who is this dog? Asks, what is this dog's name? If you bring a new friend it's COVID-19, I don't know if you're going to do this, be safe out there. But if you were to bring over a new significant other to meet your parents, right, they may go, oh, who's this? Right, if you haven't warned them. If you've warned them, then they might already know. But if you haven't warned them, I'd be like, who's this? Who's here? Who is here? Who is there? But if they said, oh, whose date is this? Who does this date belong to? Right? That would be a different kind of question here. All righty. So we're on to the third usage. I know, we're getting there. We're almost there. We're on the third usage, the final usage of plurals of lowercase letters. There is only one time that you use an apostrophe to show that there are multiples of something. If something is plural, like we've talked about before, the apostrophe will change places, so it can be a signal, but it doesn't make something plural. That's the adding an S or having a different conjugation, like child to children. If you are wanting to write out the having multiples of a single lowercase letter, that is the only time you'll use an apostrophe. So the example here, mind your P's and Q's. So this is a lowercase letter P and a lowercase letter Q, and you'll see that they are mirror images of each other. One, is a down line with a kind of a bubble going out one direction, and the other one's a down line with the bubble going out in the opposite direction. When back when there were printing presses for newspapers, people had to put little letters into a typeset thing to like spell out the words by hand. They had to do it all by hand, and the expression "mind your P's and Q's" came about because they had to put them in backwards. And P's and Q's were really easy for people to put the wrong one in, the lowercase one. So it's now an expression for be careful and don't make a mistake. But this is the only time that you'll use an apostrophe to show that something is, that there's more than one. Mind all of the P's that you are writing. Mind all of the Q's that you are using. If the letters are capitalized, do not use apostrophes, right? I have a hard time writing R's and L's. You see, I use a large R, an uppercase R, it's capitalized, then just an S, and that's going to show that it's plural. But for lowercase, I have a hard time writing R's and L's because these are lowercase and small letters. You do the apostrophe S to make it plural. This is the only time you use an apostrophe to make something plural. And you probably won't use it very often. So yes. Okay, so I know that it is 9:43, so this is the last thing to be done today. What I'd ask is that if you're typing in the chat, try and send all of your sentences at the same time. So these are 4 sentences I want you to practice writing. If you are watching the recording of this, you should send these to me via text or email. You can also email or text them to me if you're watching this live, but you can also type them into the chat. So you're going to write one sentence using apostrophes to show letters that are missing, so probably contractions. Write one sentence using apostrophes to show singular possession, that one thing owns another thing. Write one sentence using apostrophes to show plural possession, so multiple people or things share another thing, or they all own it, right? And then write one sentence that uses 2 different uses of an apostrophe. Don't use the same type twice. So if you use a contraction, that's one type. So then you need to use a one to show possession or to show plural of a lowercase letter. Don't use like multiple contractions. That's just one type. Even if you use it multiple times, that's still just one type. All right. So once you have submitted these 4 questions to me, or sorry, these 4 sentences to me, you are free to go. I am going to turn off the recording now, but be sure to send these to me, and I'm going to stay around in the Zoom room for any questions and to receive those sentences in.